The problem is sin. Sin is the problem. Homosexuality is a leaf on a tree of sins. And so on that tree, you might have liar, you might have lustful, you might have pride, you might have unrighteous anger. But what needs to be dealt with is not plucking off one sin. That's why you have some people that'll say, I asked God to make me straight and he didn't. The problem is you asked God to save you from one thing and not to save you from all of you. That was the problem. And so what needs to happen is that God needs to get a hold of the root. God needs to get to the root of the tree, change the tree through regeneration and sanctification and salvation so that the leaves now will bear fruit, where you will see joy and peace and self-control and all of the things that the fruit of the Spirit will produce. And so in me, I noticed that I had a big issue with the Lord. So I started to compare the costs. I started to think about everything that I loved and their consequences. So I thought about, okay, I'm gay. I think it's been clear that God don't like that. I done heard that all my life. Okay, that's not good. Oh, I really like getting drunk. Man, that's a sin too. Dang. I don't honor my parents. Man, Old Testament was very clear that that's not okay with God. Oh, goodness gracious, I'm a thief. Hell, wow. Like, I was just like, everything I loved was terrible. And what I saw was everything that I had affection for, everything that I enjoyed, everything that I did naturally, that at the end of the day, it wasn't worth it. So I started to have this conversation with God, and I was like, God, I hear what you're saying, but I don't want to be straight. Like, that's just not something I want to do. And that disposition of heart that I had is typical, where if you meet those who are same-sex attracted, you will hear, if you preach Jesus, what they hear you say is be straight. When in reality, Jesus is not calling us to heterosexuality, he is calling us to holiness. But it's hard to hear the difference. Hear me. Heterosexuality is not the goal per se. Holiness is the goal, because once I get to know Jesus, then he works out all the rest, right? I think sometimes people have become what I like to call heterosexual evangelists, where when talking to the LGBTQ community, they will present the gospel of marriage or the gospel of being straight as if that is the goal of this life. As if when we get to heaven, we will have marriage between man and woman. Marriage won't exist. What will exist is the Lamb and the church. Will exist in the bridegroom and the bride. So we can't preach marriage. We need to preach Jesus. So what I came to see was that God was ultimately calling me to himself. That God wanted me to know him. That God wanted me to love him. That God wanted me to serve him. So I told God in my bed, I'm like, man, what you calling me to is hard. I had tried to be saved about 18 times, reading the little sinner's prayer on the back of the little books about heaven. And it just never seemed to work, because no one had ever explained to me that salvation was a supernatural work of the Spirit of God, that I can change my clothes all day. I can change my friends all day. I can start listening to certain music, but that would not change my heart. That would not change my nature. That would not change my mind, that I needed the Spirit of God to do the work for me.